Breaker 19. Villains, you got your ears on. I'm your host, Tony. Welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. It's Monday, May 26th, episode number 15, and it's also Memorial Day. So I hope everyone is having an enjoyable holiday weekend. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. This week on the podcast, in the pre-trip, we're going to touch on the new enforcement regarding the English language requirements for truck drivers, changes to the Aurora self-driving trucks pilot program, and wonderful Werner in the news for their 401k program. In the money line this week, we're going to talk a little bit about Memorial Day and some lessons that I've learned this week. No interviews this week with it being the holiday week, but we've got plenty of great guests on deck and they're stacked up. So plenty of interviews to come here in the weeks ahead. Don't forget to hang around after the interview for the post trip. Let's get this rig rolling. If you're not driving, it's a great time to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends.
10-4 drivers, welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. This is where the real stories roll, straight from the blacktop.
Paper breaker 19, can I get a radio check? Pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. Well, there's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
Trans-Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. They've been in business since 1977, and they've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which of course is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, various applications and permits, not to mention they have a compliance program. They're a one-stop shop for your trucking needs. Check out their website, transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1-800-899-4870. Grab that safety vest and let's do the pre-trip. First off, just a quick reminder, schools are getting out. Some states, the schools are already out, like in Arizona, but up north, they're just getting out, or this is the final weeks here. So a little less stress in the mornings and afternoons with the school bus traffic, but traffic patterns are changing for the summer. Teenagers are out and about at different hours, going to jobs, going to a variety of activities. We've got the summer vacationers hitting the roads, RVs and travelers in areas they're not familiar with, more traffic in areas that are usually quieter. So keep your eyes peeled and be ready for surprises and keep up the great work being the professionals that we are out there, keeping everybody safe. First up, let's talk about the additional English language enforcement. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy had a big press conference this past week talking about the ramp up in enforcement related to the English language requirements for CDL drivers. Other than some goofy robot accounts on social media, it seems like pretty universal support across the industry for this change. It's really been quite an absurdity that these rules have been ignored. They got written a long time ago and then selectively enforced since then, especially with all the talk about safety that goes on in this industry. To watch this situation devolve over, especially the last half decade or so. I mean, it had always been somewhat of an issue. There was always those skirting the requirements. Even back in the 90s, there were plenty of CDL mills kicking out drivers who couldn't really speak English. But let's face facts. A lot of money gets made breaking rules like this. Lots of shenanigans, to steal a word from our buddy Big Cal. Lots of big corporations taking advantage of hiring contractors and all knowing that these contract vendors are out there hiring whoever they want. Lots of these vendors aren't even people in the United States. It's easy for people to set up LLCs and do all the paperwork in the United States. I've been personally inside of trucking companies that only have one non-driving employee in the United States. All the owners, dispatchers, etc., all those folks are overseas from countries that would probably surprise you. Now, some of them have their drivers on 1099s, and we've already discussed that a couple weeks back with Mike Ritzema. And it's really a shame and a bit of a disgrace that all this talk about safety gets thrown to the side, our actual safety for us truck drivers and our families and everybody else's families on the road. Drivers' livelihoods are put at risk. Trucking companies' profits are put at risk. The money's flying out of our pockets, going to other countries. And up until now, nobody seemed to want to take it all that seriously to do anything about it. But one thing I want to mention, while it's great that enforcement is going to ramp up, clean up some of this mess, I worry about one thing. Law enforcement needs to make sure that they check themselves and don't get overzealous here. We've seen it at times where one mandate, in this case, English language proficiency, can lead to an expanded pushiness and overall unprofessional behavior by law enforcement. The serve in protect and serve can sometimes get lost, and we don't need this being an excuse for bad attitudes or lack of professionalism towards truckers from the law enforcement community. Now, we're all grown-ups here, and I think that we can all read between the lines of what I'm saying. It can tend to happen. We've seen it happen to us and to others. So collectively, we need to hold law enforcement to account, to be professionals, and let us keep our professionalism as well. Just like we expect to be free from negative assumptions, let's not, as truckers, fall into the trap of making assumptions about other truckers. I live in Arizona, and it's a real problem where some people assume if someone they encounter speaks Spanish or some other language, in Arizona it's a lot of Spanish, that it means they don't speak English, they aren't citizens, or don't have a right to be or work or drive truck here. You know, when I was in England a couple of weeks back, it's a problem there as well, where people who have lived in England since World War II and their families came from other parts of the British Empire after the war to replace workers that had died in the war. There are people today being treated poorly because they look like someone who might be a recent immigrant, or they happen to be speaking in their native tongue or with an accent to their family, to their relatives, to other people who happen to speak their same native tongue. Don't make the mistake of judging things when you don't know all the details. Not everyone you overhear speaking on the phone in some other language isn't supposed to be here. Don't jump to conclusions, and be professional human beings as well as professional truck drivers as we straighten this stuff out. Shifting gears to another story about human beings. There was an article this week about Aurora and their autonomous trucks. Now, these are the guys down in Texas running a couple of Peterbilts with all of their self-driving technology strapped onto these Peterbilts. And from the sounds of it in the article, PACCAR told Aurora to put a driver back behind the wheel of these self-driving trucks. Now, I guess there always was a driver in the cab, an air quotes observer, just not in the driver's seat. Now, I'll share the article out. It has a lot of corporate speak in it, air quotes, prototype parts, not really necessary, liability, blah, blah, blah. PACCAR declined to comment. Aurora declined to comment. You read it, take from it what you want. Here's my take. This air quotes partnership seems a little tenuous. In my opinion, there should be a lot of transparency on something like this. We all have a right to know how it's going, near misses, other troubles they're having. You know, if you're going to try to sell us as a society on this in some form or fashion, then you need to be transparent with how it's going. I think a lot of us are tired of being experimented on by corporate America with the consent of the government, with the government maybe getting donations or other forms of monetary influence to adjust their opinion on who the experiment is conducted on, and shading the results of these pilot programs to a result that seems to make people a lot of money, but may not have our safety first. The heat was probably picking up in a variety of ways towards PACCAR in particular, since their logo is the recognizable one. Nobody knows who Aurora is as compared to PACCAR or Peterbilt. So a lot of these reactions probably headed PACCAR's way. And speaking of reactions, there was another article this week on the topic of autonomous trucks. Albertsons union drivers in Dallas threatening to go on strike over wages. And the newsmaking headline of that was around autonomous trucks and the threat that they feel they face from autonomous trucks taking their jobs one day. They want language in their new contract that prohibits the use of autonomous trucks. So expect the public relations battle to continue to ramp up. Some of it strikes me as a little bit of Luddite alarmism. Some of it is probably a negotiating ploy for the union. And it also gets them on TV when you bring up topics like this. But back to PACCAR and Aurora, I think the driver in the seat is a PR move. If someone's sitting in the driver's seat, it probably makes for less attention, less alarmed citizens calling up or making videos, sharing them on social media, calling up PACCAR, and overall getting excited or overexcited about a problem that we don't know exists. This goes back to the part about being transparent. How is it really going? You've started in May. We're at the end of May. What are some of the results? I don't know why they didn't just leave the observer in the driver's seat in the first place, except for some PR shots. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I'm interested to see some results of how the truck and the technology has performed. I think we're all curious to know how it's performed in an unbiased set of data so everybody can get an idea of what it looks like. I mean, we wouldn't expect it to be perfect, but on the other hand, you better have pretty damn good technology if you're putting trucks in the real world out on the road with people's families. Finally, on the pre-trip, wonderful Werner announced this week that they're cutting their 401k match for employees, including drivers. Now, I called them wonderful Werner tongue-in-cheek here. I don't know if any of you ever listened to Trucker Wally back in the day. He had some really funny bits, and he had nicknames for a bunch of the trucking companies. Wonderful Werner was the Werner nickname. I'll post some of his stuff out there in case you missed it. Some of it was really funny. Stuff like Don's Dispatching School and Thermo King Reefer Tarps. Some classic trucking humor, comedy, some funny songs as well. He's kind of a jack of all trades in the trucking comedy space. Really entertaining guy and content there. Anyways, Werner cut its 401k or suspended, an indefinite suspension without any end date for it. They posted an operating loss in Q1. And to quote their statement, they are taking intentional steps to streamline operations and position the company for long-term growth. Of course, the comments came flowing in from both sides, both outside of Werner and inside of Werner, from drivers on social media, Reddit, Facebook, the usual places. A lot of the comments revolved around things that maybe could have been cut instead, like maybe their anchor sponsorship of Blaine Perkins' number 31 NASCAR. Some comments asked if this was related to some of the crash payouts that have gone on recently. Other people wondered if this is a way to get some drivers to quit due to the bad freight market. And we're seeing a lot of that going on, both in trucking and in other industries. Cut the pay, make people come to the office who are working remotely, reduce the benefits, all different ways to get people looking for other jobs in the hopes that they leave without creating negative headlines like a mass layoff would, or the cost of a mass layoff, severance packages, unemployment claims, things like that. If people quit, you don't have to pay those. Or every claim against the company for unemployment benefits raises the rate that that company has to pay for unemployment insurance going forward. So better for them if you quit, both in the immediate financial and headline standpoint, especially in the case of a public company like Werner Enterprises is, and also in the long term on what they pay for unemployment insurance going forward. Now, a very interesting announcement that came alongside this one this week was Werner announced it would be paying out a dividend to its investors like usual upcoming here in July. 14 cents per share, which made no change, no drop year over year. So the same ratio of dividend out to their shareholders. So the investors are being made whole, but employees not so much. Now, I'm no professional economist or stock analyst, but it would appear that stock price and appeasing investors was selected over employee benefits. I'm not blind to the realities of business and the tough choices that come with it. In isolation, these two headlines are just part of business. Together in the same week is probably a pretty tough pill to swallow for those directly impacted. Relating this back to a discussion from a few weeks ago with both Mike Ritzema at Superior Trucking Payroll Service and Mike Barber over at Truckers Wealth, you need to know what benefits you get, how you're taking advantage of them while you still have them, and how that all fits into your decision of who you work for and how you're building wealth for yourself and your family. As we see in this example this week, all of these things are subject to change at a whim, at a moment's notice. Businesses have choices to make, and so do you. Plan accordingly and always be preparing yourself for potential changes and always be building for the future. That's the pre-trip for this week. No defects detected, but that's just my opinion. If you find defects, let us know. Get that seat adjusted. Let's push the buttons in. We've got work to do. At the Mid-America Truck Show, I had the fortune to meet up with Mike Barber, founder of Truckers Wealth. Both of us have a passion for understanding the uniqueness of truckers and sharing our knowledge wherever we can. Mike has over 20 years of dedicated experience serving the trucking industry. Truckers Wealth has created a specialized financial hub where truckers can receive expert advice and tailored solutions to build wealth, minimize taxes, and secure lifetime income for themselves and their families. Truckers Wealth provides personal strategies to help you achieve financial freedom on your terms. Check out his website, truckers-wealth.com, and look forward to seeing him on the program here soon.
It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 Experience. Let's hit the road.
Welcome back. Let's drop down to line 3 and knock out the money line this week. This week on the money line, I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a little bit. I'm going to wander around a little, but I've got a plan, and I think that all the wandering will lead us to the point I'm trying to make. All who wander are not lost. It's Memorial Day today as I record this, and I've got a couple very strong memories about Memorial Day. I've been to Arlington National Cemetery one time, saw the tomb of the unknown soldier, watched the changing of the guard, and spent some time on the grounds there. And even though it didn't resonate as much then, because I was young, I was 17 at the time, I was there by myself, I didn't comprehend the enormity of it. All the gravestones down the hills and up the other side in all directions, the lives of so many people, the amount given, the amount sacrificed. Like I said, I was a kid then. But even though I couldn't comprehend it, it burned an image in my mind so clear that 30 some years later, it's still crystal clear to me. And now I have the opportunity to understand it a little bit better in life. Same thing when I visited the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. A mind-blowing amount of names all lined up on that wall. And we know the numbers, right? We heard them in school as kids, or on TV, on the news, or in documentaries, or even in movies that we watch, TV shows that we watch where the numbers flash up on a screen. But nothing resonates so deeply as all of the gravestones when you see them all, or all of the names when you see them all on the wall, panel by panel, dozens of panels, tens of thousands of names, hundreds of thousands of gravestones. Later in life, probably in my late 20s or so, I told a person who I knew was a veteran, Happy Memorial Day, and thank you for your service. And he told me, which put me back, I appreciate the thanks, but this day isn't for me. And I was like, what? What do you mean it's not for you? And by the look on my face, he knew I was confused. So he explained further. He said, this day is for those who are gone, not for me. We have a day, Veterans Day. This is Memorial Day. And since then, I've never forgot what he said and the difference between the two. So these two memories are intertwined for me. The holiday for those who are gone, and especially for those who lost their lives while serving, and those places where we commemorate them. Now, because I'm getting older, death is finding its way into my life more. It's just the nature of things. It's a part of life all the time, and it hits all of us at different times. But the older you get, it likely touches you more. Parents, parents of friends, aunts, uncles, parents of coworkers. And as it touches closer and closer more frequently, I'm seeing it more clearly now than I could have earlier, and the patterns that emerge afterwards, and really the finality of it. Now, I know this probably sounds stupid. Of course, death is final, but the finality of it for the people still alive as well. The things unsaid, the things undone. It's so much closer now seeing the reality of that, or just being in moments sitting next to a friend when they remember that their mom is gone or that their dad is gone, and the finality of that, that there is no calling up to hear a story again. There's no reaching out to ask a question or just to say, I love you. I'm up in Minnesota this week, and by the luck of the trucking gods, Big Cal happened to be going through the area. So I drove up to Wisconsin and I got to hang out with him as he was passing through to his delivery tomorrow. As I was driving up there, a flood of memories came back to me. I hadn't been on that stretch of road for a long time, heading east on 494 around the southeast side of the Twin Cities up to 94 east and then over into Wisconsin. I've driven that stretch hundreds of times, many hundreds of times, but the last time I drove that was probably 12 years ago, at least. So I thought about a lot of things in that 30, 40-minute drive. All the adventures that started and came to a conclusion on that road, dodging the scales and what a pain it was if you had to dodge them because of the rivers and there's only so many ways across and the ways to dodge them weren't very much fun. The times that I said screw it all and just prayed and hoped to get past the scale, or that I got the bypass lane and didn't have to prove I could legally be there to the scale master. And I thought about how nice it was to travel something so familiar and yet it also be so new again with all the different buildings. I've always loved driving roads that I've never been on before. I've got many maps laying around the house that have roads highlighted, which roads I remember being on, which roads that I haven't. So I can make choices on any other future road trips of which route I may want to take to see new roads that I've never seen before. And there were plenty of times where I would take the long route just to be able to highlight a new road in one of those maps. And also the regrets that I sometimes end up with after choosing one of these roads, going, why in the world did I choose this road with so many turns and so many towns? But I did it for the adventure. Now that I'm older, I have a desire. I've changed a little bit, not just the new roads, but the roads that I haven't traveled on in a long time, and see what's new. See how the reality of today matches up with the memory of the last time I was there. But what I thought of today as I was on the way to see Cal, the last time I drove this road, I had no idea that it was going to be the last time. Even 6 months before we moved to Arizona, I would have laughed at the idea that I'd never drive that stretch of road again. It's right in my backyard. It's been in my backyard for the vast majority of my life. And except for wanting to go have some fellowship with Cal on Memorial Day, who knows? That last time could have very well stayed the last time. Also this week, a friend of mine, Alyssa, made a post that hit a nerve with me on Facebook, and it had me thinking for days. She's a trucker, and she's out on the big road with her daughter, traveling with her as well, and their dog. And I'll share the post that hit home for me on my Facebook as well. It was her and her daughter and her dog. They found a really lovely place to park the truck with a big grassy field, and they were playing. They had a hammock set up in the trailer, and the dog was running around. It was a beautiful moment. And someone on her page asked, how do you find these places? And I know the person meant specifically like these places and how do you find them? But I took the question in a different way in my mind. And the answer that my mind created into the question that I had altered was she looks for them. And not in a sarcastic way, but in a philosophical way. She makes the effort to find a place to give them a thing that they want, which is to have fun and enjoy themselves and have the dog run around and a kid be a kid in a grassy field. And it really got me thinking quite a bit this week about what am I seeking? What am I doing to find the things that I'm really seeking in my life? Am I prioritizing those things? Do I even really know what those things are? Like, if I said them out loud, am I putting in the effort for those things? Am I setting aside the things that aren't what I'm seeking to make room for what I am seeking? And so, in these few little stories, these little snippets of my last week, I've kind of wandered around a bit. Now, let's see if I can keep my end of the bargain here and tie them together and make a point. Hopefully, this doesn't end up like mini trucker stories about 5 miles from a point and summed up with what were we talking about again? The points that I'm trying to make. Invest in figuring out what's really important to you. And there's going to be conflicts between what you're investing in and the return that you're actually seeking. So make the changes needed to address those conflicts. You don't know when it's going to be the last time for something. There was no sign on I-94 just for me that said, Tony, take a good look around. You're never going to see this again. And once you've decided what you're seeking, make time for it. Carpe diem, seize the day. Big Cal asked me a couple of times, are you sure you've got time for this? He knows why I'm up here visiting family, babysitting a granddaughter. And he recognized that I'd be giving up something else in order to make time for him. And my wife's been around me long enough to know how much it would mean to me to be able to go see Cal, just like she knew what it meant for the two of us to go visit Mara and the other Tony Elliott earlier in the week. Not because of some podcast, but because our lives are now intertwined in more than just an hour-long interview. It means something to me to shake their hands, give them a hug. In trucking, this thing of ours is powerful, and it builds powerful connections, and those mean a lot to me. So I made time. And all this kind of goes back to the reasons why I'm putting so much effort in behind the scenes right now into the design of what I'm calling Trucking Legacy. Hopefully, Trucking Legacy starts by people asking themselves, what is your legacy? What is your trucking legacy that you want to share? We spend a ton of time out here in these trucks, on these roads, at shippers, receivers, and everywhere in between. Because we've invested so much of our lives to this, let's make sure that it isn't lost forever when we're gone. The stories, the funny ones, the sad ones, the powerful ones, the life-changing ones, the reasons why we did it, as we drove those miles, as we slept in the cold, as we fought through snowstorms and tornadoes and every other thing that gets thrown at us. It was hard, it takes sacrifice, but there's joy and there's memories. Build them, share them with the people that you're doing them for and the reasons you were thinking about while you were doing them. And it's not just about pictures. Record audio on your phone. Share videos. Do an interview with me, just so that you have a record of telling that story and us having a good time telling it, so that we can put it up there in your Trucking Legacy page. Record your legacy every day. And I didn't get it when I was 17 standing in Arlington National Cemetery the way I get it now. I get it now. And sometimes your kid or your family, they're not going to get it now, but all these things will be waiting for them when they're ready. That's it for the money line this week. Once again, share your thoughts and ideas. Let's drop it down to line 4 for a quick break and go finish up our post trip. TrueTMS is a cloud-based transportation management system. Being in the cloud makes integrations faster and you're able to access the platform from anywhere. It has intuitive planning, on-demand reporting, and easy order creation, rating, and invoices, which turns tedious admin work into streamlined automated workflows. The folks at TrueTMS have decades of trucking and liquid experience, and they care about this industry. They don't just sell you a product, they're invested in your success. Visit their website, truetms.com, and of course, tell them Channel 19 sent you.
We're talking trucking life, uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories, and the miles in between. From first jobs to last hauls, the laughs that kept us going, and the lessons that left a mark.
Quick reminder to pay a visit to our friends of the show on social media. Mara Elliott's page, Truckers Wealth, Superior Trucking Payroll Services, the Feathersons. I-95 Truckers, Al had a bunch of other cool photos this past week to go along with his shots from I-95 on Monday, so check those out. Big Cal's Trucking Kitchen, subscribe to his page. Check out Coffee with Cal. It's a great way to start your day on a positive note. Chris Barber, Chris was back in court this past week in Ottawa. He posted a video, I think maybe Sunday, maybe Monday. And I can't remember how many times he said that he's been to Ottawa, dozens of trips to Ottawa for these court cases, hundreds of days missed from family and being able to work. Let's hope some good news comes Chris's way soon. This coming week, I'll be heading out into the prairies of western Minnesota, where I grew up. Check in with Mile Marker Mike. Danger Dave might be around. See if we can't catch up with the legend and a bunch of other folks out there where I grew up and got my trucking journey started. Hopefully we capture some interviews. Definitely we'll capture some photos, but it should be a great time. A lot of trips down memory lane. Now, I know we've got some of the newer generation of truckers listening to the program, so I figured I should probably explain something from the last episode. In the last episode, I mentioned something called a Discman. And in the 90s, a Discman was made by Sony. It was the newest iteration of portable music that started with the Walkman. And the Walkman played cassettes and had an AM, FM radio to it. And you could walk around with it. It didn't quite fit in your pocket. It was kind of bulky, but you could walk around with it. And that was kind of, aside from a giant boombox strapped on your shoulder from the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, this was probably the best way to have portable music in the 90s. Now, the Walkman burned about 8 batteries an hour or so. The Discman was a little more efficient, but it was a portable CD player, compact discs. And since new trucks in the 90s only had cassette tape players at best, you needed an adapter that looked like a cassette tape. And you would stick it in the cassette player and had a cord dangling off that you connected out to your headphone jack, your 3.5 millimeter jack out of your Discman. In-dash CD players, they existed. Cars were starting to get them. The detachable face era for theft prevention was in full swing, but CD players and semi-trucks was definitely not a match made in heaven. The rough ride, most of the time it was skipping. If you put your Discman on a pile of clothes or a jacket in the passenger seat, you had a pretty nice cushion, and it largely didn't skip most of the time. It was a pretty good setup. There were some exceptions. I-80 headed eastbound towards the GW Bridge, Chicago, pick your tollway, especially in the wintertime after their little patch job would blow up from all the overweight trucks. So it wasn't entirely foolproof, but it was pretty good. And there was no cushion alive that was going to keep a CD from skipping in those places. Now, at one point, I even had an 8-track player in the dash. They made an adapter that looked like an 8-track tape, and you could put a cassette into it and then put that in the 8-track player. So at one point, I had daisy chained together a Discman to a cassette adapter that was in an 8-track adapter. And thank God for Radio Shack. You could solve almost any of your problems back in the 80s and 90s with Radio Shack and Napa combined. So there's your explanation on that for those who didn't go through the Walkman Discman experience. The summer truck show season's in full swing, of course. Looks like they had an amazing time down in Bristol, Tennessee. Large Cars and Guitars, #4. Lots of amazing pictures on social media, great videos. Looked like great weather. So it looks like that was a really great show. I hope to get out to that one next year. The American Trucking Historical Society has their big show next weekend in Madison, Wisconsin. Of course, the Walcott Truckers Jamboree coming up in July, Southern Idaho Truck Show. We've got the Coonley Brothers. I don't have any idea if I'm saying that right. The Coonley Brothers Semi-Stampede. They've got 2 of those, one in June, one in September. Check those out. Also, we've got the website, thetruckshowlist.com. For more information on upcoming shows across the country this summer and fall. Get out there, engage with the trucking community. It's a ton of fun, a lot of smiles. bring your kids. They have a great time. Create the next generation of truck lovers out there in your family by taking them out to a truck show this summer. Be sure to keep reaching out to us. If you'd like to be on the program, message us on social media, email us at inbox@channel19experience.com. There's also a contact form on the website, channel19experience.com. Keep sharing the podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe, heart. Thanks for listening this week. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll see y'all next week. We've got work to do.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.